Jack Wiedenfeld, and I have the honor to be president of the Carolina Arbors Veterans Club. Thank you for coming to our event honoring those who we lost 20 years and 15 minutes ago when a plane hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York. That attack on our homeland changed our world and how we all live. To get this program going, I'm going to ask you all to stand as our honor guard presents our flag, after which we will have the Pledge of Allegiance, and then the choir will sing the national anthem.
Present arms!
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And you see by the road we march, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose white stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the darkest red flag of were singing there. It proved through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free, home of the brave.
Thank you.
Order! Arms! Left face! Forward! March!
"20 years ago today, I was assigned to the Pentagon. I was not in the building when that plane came in at 9:37 this morning. Actually, I was here in North Carolina. I was about 50 miles due west of here. You may be seated, please. One of my friends who was there was also not in the building at that time. He was mountain climbing by himself out in the Midwest in the Rocky Mountains near a large city. He fell down a small ravine, broke his leg, and couldn't walk or climb. And so there he stayed for a while. Luckily for him, he had a cell phone. He pulled out his cell phone, called 911, and they came and rescued him 8 hours later. It was not that they didn't have enough help. It was not because they forgot about him. They stayed in constant contact with him over the cell phone and knew he was okay. It's just that they gave him a lower priority because so much was going on during that time. And he got to watch that city, the activities of that city from a mountainside view. I vividly remember his story and my story, and I'm sure most of you here today can probably remember where you were during that time, during this hour 20 years ago. For opening prayer this morning, I just simply want to read a prayer that I found, and it's entitled, "May All of Us Remember." I didn't write the prayer, but I wish I had. Would you bow your head with me as I read this prayer, please? May all of us remember with love and compassion this day May we grieve with those who still mourn and share memories with those who cannot forget. May we draw strength from those who bravely responded and gave their lives to save others. May we stand with strangers who became neighbors that day and remember their generosity and their hospitality. Above all, God, may we remember your faithfulness and learn to trust in your unfailing love. Amen.
Thank you, Richard. Next, I'd like to introduce Andy Colazzo. If you haven't had a chance, he's the man that painted all those pictures over in the corner there, near where the coffee is. And you need to take a few minutes to view those. They're just works of art that are wonderful. And they're by one of our residents right here in our neighborhood.
Thank you, Jack, for inviting me to say a few words and to display my paintings here, 9/11 paintings. My name is Andy Colazzo, and I was a firefighter assigned to Engine Company 35 in Manhattan. I had the honor to work with some of the most dedicated firefighters you ever wanted to work with. Even some of the funniest characters you wanted to work with. I loved the job, but after 23 years, I decided to retire. And with my wife, Mary Ellen, I relocated to the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. Several years went by, and on the morning of September 11, 2001, I turned on to the TV to witness, like many of you here, two planes smashing into the Twin Towers. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I asked myself a couple of questions. Who could be responsible for this terrible act? And how many innocent people are going to die in those two towers? And of course, how many firefighters, many of them friends of mine, are not going home today? These 343 firefighters didn't sign up to become heroes. They joined the fire department to help people, to make a difference in the life of others. It was a call they heard all their lives and ultimately took their lives. It even took the life of our fire department chaplain, Father Michael Judge, who was kneeling down, giving the last rites to a firefighter who had died. A jumper had killed him. And Father Judge was killed by debris falling down and hitting him on the head. Besides the 343 firefighters and Father Judge, 23 police officers, 37 Port Authority police officers, 8 emergency, and over 2,000 office workers died in those two towers. It was the worst tragedy in the history of New York City. Sadly, over 200 more died in the plane crash in Pennsylvania and the plane that hit the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. But the casualties didn't end there, because many years later, many more died from injuries related to 9/11, almost half of them from lung cancer. The weeks that followed, I spent driving back and forth from Pennsylvania to New York to attend funerals and to visit the firehouses. One firehouse, Ladder 3, lost 11 members out of 25 members assigned to that company. I was heartbroken to see to see the pain and suffering all these families were going through. Months later, I wanted to get back to my love of art and painting. And I bought a few canvases, and I wanted to paint 9/11 scenes and dedicated my paintings to those heroes and tried to depict their bravery and anguish and helplessness to the loss of so many lives. Those are my paintings. I'd like to end by just thanking you, all of you, for coming out here today on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And let's never ever forget what happened on the tragic day. Take it.
Next, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, and he is a friend of our Veterans Club and represents the Raleigh Veterans Center in Raleigh as a Veterans Outreach Program Specialist. He joined the Navy in 1997 and is the grandson of a World War II Bataan Death March survivor. Moses served during both the Afghan and Iraq wars and retired from service in 2006. Moses sits on multiple community affairs boards with work towards coordinating, planning, and implementing events and activities for veterans in this area. It is my honor to present to you Moses Gloria.
Oh boy. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Outstanding day. Normally, I don't write speeches because usually I'm able to talk and share my thoughts a lot since I'm so used to talking to big crowds. It started when I was a Navy corpsman, talked to Marines about safety stand-downs and being careful out in the community. As you heard, I didn't even know that my grandfather was a Bataan Death March survivor. I didn't know that fact until I got hurt myself and was going through a medical retirement process where my dad disclosed that to me. I knew about him when I was little and that he was a tough old bird, but I didn't know of the experience that he had in World War II. I also didn't know about my dad's Vietnam experience either until my first deployment. And that's my legacy. I tend to serve without even knowing it. So 20 years later, on this day, on 9/11, I was active duty. I was living in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina as a Navy corpsman attached to a Marine unit, specifically 26 MEU, which is a Marine Expeditionary Unit. And at the time, prior to 9/11, we were tasked to do a MEU, which is basically a deployment to the Mediterranean on the USS Bataan, an LHD, carrying a bunch of Marines from the East Coast and kind of patrol the area of the Mediterranean. It was supposed to be my last beer cruise because at the time that was my 5-year mark or 4 and change, and I was going to get out. I was going to go to PA school and try becoming a physician assistant. Plans changed that day. So on 9/11, around 8:46, American Airlines Flight 11 hit the World Trade Center. I had my cell phone on. I did not have my TV on. I was at home right outside of Camp Lejeune getting ready to go on leave because we had a block leave period where Block A was on a leave process, and in between that block, we ended up staggering people and coming back because we were supposed to deploy around October to go to the Med. And at the time, I decided to stick around at my home to clear things up before I went down to DC to visit my parents. So around that time, give or take around like 8:50, I get a phone call from Petty Officer Erica DeLuciano. And she calls me and says, "You need to get your ass back on base." I'm like, "Screw that, I'm on leave, kiss my butt," basically. In the less colorful language that you can imagine. And she's like, "No, I'm serious, you're recalled back into base, you need to haul ass and get yourself down here." And I asked why. Said, "Everyone's being recalled, a plane hit the towers, aren't you watching the news?" And I'm like, "No, I turned off my cable. I have nothing. I turned off everything. All I had was my cell phone." So he's like, "Grab your gear. I don't think you're coming back." So I grabbed everything I had. Most of it was packed because I was going on leave. But this time I had to pack all my uniforms, all my gear, my med pack, and try hauling on base. She advised me that I would be let in through Jacksonville and through the gate a lot quicker because at the time on my ID card I had a sticker that said I was part of the 26 MEU, assigned to the baton on my ID. Basically the sticker covered up my Navy SEAL, the U.S. Navy SEAL on the ID card. And it was a green sticker that it just identified that we were part of the MEU. And apparently that could get me clear through all the roadblocks and all the traffic jams that was being caused that morning. So around 9:03, and I'm still packing, United Airlines 175 hit the second time on the World Trade Center. At this time, I did not see those images live as far as those two planes were concerned, because I was trying to get my butt back into Camp Lejeune as quickly as possible. As I was driving, traffic at Lejeune, especially going down the main road going in, was bumper to bumper. People trying to get across. I was trying to get across. I was traveling like on the grass with my little Honda Civic, which is not exactly an off-road vehicle at the time. Cops would stop me and try having me identify, like, what makes you so special? And then he saw my sticker and said, "Okay, go on by." And it still took me a good hour to get on post. It was that Charlie Foxtrot of the day that morning for most of us active duty guys trying to get on post. As soon as I checked in, they were like, "All right, Doc, we got a bird out here, CH-53, which is a helicopter that has extreme range. Go up on the flight line and we're gonna send you up to New York." And I still haven't seen the towers hit. I didn't know what was going on. And I think around this time, American Airlines Flight 77 was hijacked over Ohio. And then also, United Airlines Flight 93 was flying into DC and crashed near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, due to the courageous airline stewardess and passengers of that flying ended up diverting it to Pennsylvania. So this whole entire time, I did not know the extent of what was going on. I just knew that what I was told is that we got attacked. You need to get your ass on a plane, basically a bird, a helicopter, and because you're a corpsman, grab your medical gear, and you're flying out to New York. So we're sitting down there on the flight line. We actually lift off. Maybe 20 minutes in the flight, they ended up recalling us back. The word that I got from my gunny was like, "Doc, unfortunately, there's nothing for you to do. There isn't influx of casualties. They've got the hospital ship out there. They've deployed assets to the area. Everyone's on high alert. For right now, you're to go to main side Camp Lejeune to supply and try grabbing our Connex boxes and fill them up to the bore." So this is around noon. I head down there with a with a cadre of other corpsmen from different squadrons and units, and we're just rifling supply. Typically on a MEU or med deployment, because this wasn't my first go around, this was like my little farewell go around, but usually on a MEU, we supply our stuff during our 6-month deployments, maybe like 50 to 60% capacity, because normally we waste the medical supplies and regular supplies that we bring out on a MEU because we don't need it, because that's not a wartime supply line or weight as far as what we bring on board ship. But this time I'm in supply, and the staff sergeant's like, and the other corpsmen that are around there is like, hey doc, here you go. IV bags, morphine, bandages, all kinds of gear. Hell, they even gave us MVGs. I mean, we weren't rated for any of that stuff, but pretty much we were given everything. That day continued. We had a bunch of intel briefs on what's going on. None of us was sure what was going on. A lot of us got tasked with trying to contact other Marines out of our unit. I was the senior medical person for our unit, where I was trying to get in touch with my doctors, and my chief at the time that was on leave, and trying to find out where the hell they are and how quickly they could get back, because the old man wanted us to come back ASAP. We were the most readily available unit that was getting ready to deploy. So most of us knew we were going to go somewhere. Just point us to the general area, who did it, whatever, to place the country on lockdown, or, you know, be something of comfort to maybe even outside of New York or DC. We just didn't know exactly what we were doing, so everything was kind of flooding in. So for you Marines out there, most of you guys know that docs were pretty much embedded with you guys. And we tend to be your brother, your sister, your chaplain, your best friend, your spouse. You guys pretty much disclose anything to the doc. And that day, a lot of sidebars were coming in my way of like, is this for real? Are we gonna see some combat? Or, well, let's go get these guys. And at the time, we had no idea what was going on. We just knew that these 4 attacks on this day meant something was coming down. So, as the day, obviously it's mostly a blur to me, because most of it was prepping, making phone calls, trying to get our act together, trying to find out what was the next orders, how we were moving out, a lot of hurry up and wait. This is also probably the first time I've ever talked in detail specifically about the day or about anything in particular. Usually I just talk vaguely about my experiences. So it's a little kind of hard for me to kind of be collective about this. So 20 years ago today, a total of 2,977 people died on U.S. soil. Out of that, the 2-6 MEU, on the same day that President Bush announced a statement worldwide that Osama bin Laden, out of Afghanistan, with the Taliban group as a terrorist organization, was responsible for the attacks this day 20 years ago. On that same day, 2-6 MEU was completely deployed out on sea and heading to the Med. A couple days later, after the 20th, when we reached Spain, when we got back on board ship, and then we started heading down the Suez Canal, everybody on board ship in my Marine unit knew that we were going to Afghanistan and bring the fight to them. So most of us that ever wore the uniform, particularly at that time, it's peacetime. Most of us don't expect to go to war. Most of us talk about we're just doing our jobs. But at that time, especially with 9/11, with our families left behind, and the images that we've seen, and the intel that was given, a lot of us were anxious. We were proud to be one of the lucky few to be part of the tip of the spear to protect our country and to respond to the attacks on 9/11. During this time frame, like I said, this day has affected me for 20 years, but particularly that first deployment, because I felt honor, scared, angry about what I was gonna do, about what we were representing when we went into Afghanistan. So you know that you're gonna be deploying in country or in a combat situation if the mess decides to feed you steak and shrimp and tries to give you ice cream. It's pretty much a standard thing. When you get a good meal, you're screwed. It wasn't in correlation with Thanksgiving. It was our Thanksgiving meal, but a little afterwards we got like another great meal, and we knew that some of us would be going in Afghanistan. So at the time, there was us 260 Marine unit or Marine being deployed out on board ship. We're basically 860 nautical miles to a landlocked area to try doing the largest amphibious assault in a foreign country. We had two MEUs at the time, one from the East Coast, one from the West. The East Coast guys were already doing gator squares or patrolling the area right outside of Afghanistan. And the plan was to bring in waves into Afghanistan with our coalition forces, the special op guys, and then us. So I was told by my command that I would be going on the third wave. I went the first wave. So my knuckle ass, me being one of the corpsmen, I ended up joining a group of 20 Marines to be the advance party for our MEU. So we took about 6 CH-53 helicopters from the baton, from our air group, and we were sorting guys from the East Coast MEU into Afghanistan. It was about a 6-hour flight, 4 to 6 hour flight. We ended up taking Camp Rhino, a forwarding operating base, when we got there. It was a desert airstrip that the Afghans used to fly out opium drugs, and we took it with little fanfare. Yeah. So we built up the FOB in Rhino. General Mattis was the top senior officer on deck at the FOB in Rhino. And mind you, I have nothing to do with leadership. I was just a regular grunt corpsman hanging out and just being told where to go, where to be at. I was proud of what we had in Rhino because we had not only U.S. forces, we had a bunch of Australian spec op guys with us, some Brits, some Germans. I think we had some Swedes. I couldn't remember. And we had a Delta team and a SEAL team there too. But our Marines were the only conventional forces in country. And we're looking at what they were bringing, what their supplies were, and they were sharing with us intel, tactics, how we should be like geared up, should we be bringing whenever we had to move again. We were setting up patrols, burn pits to burn like ordnance. We were burning the drugs that were on there, and then later on one of the gunnies came up to me and it's like, hey Doc, I think we got to rotate the burn crews because they're getting high. So everybody on deck, officer, senior staff NCOs, medical staff, even the spec out guys, we had to rotate everybody with when we were burning unused ordnance, our waste, and those drugs. So we took turns. Of course, at the time, we had no idea that that would ultimately affect our health downrange later on. But at the time, you couldn't really convince any of the guys not to do the burn pits, even though it smelled so bad, because they got that high. But anywho, so around December 4th, we had two birds that basically a cobra ended up having a malfunction earlier that morning, around 8-ish, which is kind of eerily similar of how a bird hit the World Trade Center. So they were trying to place a recovery team, and they were like, hey doc, we need you to get on a bird and kind of help secure this aircraft so it's not going to be turned over to the enemy. It basically lost its skids, which are the on a Cobra helicopter, it's those sled-like things that you kind of land on. So those got ripped off. And a Cobra tends to have a lot of ordnance on it. And of course, we don't want to leave that behind. We don't want to leave the enemy behind. Let's see if it's recoverable. If not, let's blow it up. So as I'm waiting on the flight line, we get this call of mass cache. And I'm like, mass cache? Where the hell is everybody at? Most people is right here in Camp Rhino. And at the time, I had no idea that we had U.S. Special Forces and the Secret Squirrel CIA folks with our allies, the Northern Alliance, fighting for their lives. There was a prison outbreak. It was also the same day that we got Johnny Walker, who was that U.S. traitor at the time. So I got told to fly out to that Ashgar region for a mass cache event. Mass casualty, for those in the medical field or just casually learning about that thing, usually what mass cache means is there's more casualties than what medical can kind of help out with. So on one bird, there was the MEU surgeon, who's the top doc in country, a SEAL doc, and then what used to be a first-class respiratory tech. He used to be a SAR corpsman. They sent that bird out, thinking that would be enough. And it turned out there was more casualties that day. So I ended up flying in as a big corpsman with like about 4 years of naval service with the Marines, flying in a combat zone. So my first experience getting shot at was on a bird, on a 53. We were taking pot shots. Crew chiefs are laying down their 50 cal. One of the AOs, which is an aero reserver or an extra crew member of the helicopter crew, was firing his M16 off the back of the ramp. And for some odd reason, because everyone else was shooting, I pull out my itty bitty 9mm and start shooting down range out that back ramp, knowing I don't know what the hell I'm shooting at. Then I realized I needed to stop shooting because I only had 2 clips. And I didn't really have that much ammo, and you definitely don't want doc shooting at anything. If I'm shooting, we're in trouble, right? Which is usually the case. So we get in the landing zone, there's pop smoke. We bring in some casualties. And I remember this Northern Alliance kid, maybe about 12, 14, around that age, was holding a pressure dressing to, at the time, when I found out later, his name was Staff Sergeant Browser, one of the Army Spec Op guys. He took shrapnel to the head and the neck, has some agonal breaths, which are snoring, which is big sign that it was a rough go. And the bird, especially when I was triaging, getting on the bird, and then doing medical treatment on the bird, you kind of have to make decisions based upon what you can do at the time. And I passed up on that staff sergeant because there wasn't much I can do. I was treating like 2 other Americans on board that flight back to Rhino. And I was treating that kid. I was telling him to let go so I can actually take a look at his wounds that he had in his arm. But he refused and kept his hands on this staff sergeant. I ended up running out of everything in my bag. All my bandages that I brought, the morphine that I had, the Valium. I ran out of everything within just a 45-minute flight, or less than 45, maybe like 15, 20 minutes. It wasn't that long. I ran out. That bird was full. I landed in a Rhino. We're trying to triage what we had from the multiple birds, because we even had helicopters that were bringing casualties that didn't even have corpsmen on it. We had the Battalion A station that we set up with a surgical unit in place right outside one of these theater buildings, and we were bringing casualties in. As I stopped, one of the lieutenants was like, "All right, what do you got?" And I told him basically all the medical folks that I had. And then he's like, "I need you to follow that guy that you have, the expectant," because I already tagged him as expecting, meaning that we couldn't waste medical resources on him. So I ended up following him to the tent, and by this time I'm manually bagging him, maintaining his respirations. And then I was given some morphine, and the captain, the furloughed captain on the Navy side, which was our MEU surgeon, ended up saying, "All right, you're gonna make him comfortable. Here's some morphine. Wait till the chaplains come in." So as a corpsman or anybody medical, your job is to save lives. And on that day, I had an experience of trying to make somebody's life comfortable with what he's done and what he sacrificed to our country as a young 20-year-old, or 20-something-year-old. I was so engrossed with making sure I was bagging him, and I was like, shoulda, coulda, woulda. What if I got my hands on him earlier on the earlier flight? Instead of taking care of everybody else on the bird, what if I could have extended his life or saved him at the time when I first laid eyes on him? You know, until this day, I still think the same way. After, a couple of years later, I realized I did the right thing, as opposed to using the word or the thought process that I killed him, as opposed to making him feel with comfort and ease that, somebody was with him. I got a tap on the shoulder, and it ended up being Mad Dog Mattis himself. And he's like, "It's okay, son. We're here." Because I didn't even realize he snuck up on me. He's a damn good Marine, because I had no idea he came around the corner. He tapped my shoulder. Navy chaplain was right there. And I ended up administering through his IV the morphine to cause respiratory depression, to basically put him to sleep. I don't remember what was said. I just did what I was told to do and did my job. The doctor wasn't even in that damn room. It was me, the chaplain, and Mattis. I walked out of the tent and I started crying. I was losing it. Then a couple of my Marines, because I didn't go there with my unit. I went there on an advance party. I just got sucked into, like, okay, you're a doc. Come on down. My Marine saw me, and I stopped crying. Because when we were taught in field med school is never show your Marines that you're hurt. Like, try to project as much as possible that you're good to go and you're capable of treating them. So as soon as I saw my Marines taking like eyeballs on me, I guess I sucked it up and stopped crying. Next thing I know, I got ordered to take a bunch of casualties back on board our ships, the Baton and the Prelude. The Prelude had 11 patients on that. I'm sorry, 9 patients on the Prelude, and I got the 11 to fly back on the Baton. By this time, it was early evening, we were sitting on the flight deck, and again, I had this time a Northern Alliance guy. I had a guy that I had to manually bag throughout that 4 to 6 hour flight. Anytime as SaO2s, which is his oxygen level, that you put this thing on a finger and as soon as it hit like the high 80s or 90s, I stopped bagging him to reassess everybody on the bird. Till this day, I have no idea what the hell I did. I was writing stuff down, I just did everything. I had no idea. What I do remember is the pilot was saying on the radio, we're almost at the Baton, but we got a problem. One of our landing gears wasn't coming down, which is a big problem. Try flying a 53 at night around 2 o'clock in the morning on a moving ship, dart using MVGs to land one without a landing gear. So for some odd reason, there was a staff sergeant named Stump, and the reason why I remember him, because he saved my ass, or saved us on that bird, was that he ended up going underneath the helicopter, and a rotor wash usually kind of blows things away. Ended up securing that wheel and pinning it down so we can land. I tell you what, I was so exhausted. Didn't even know what the hell I did. I was so phased. I was cramping up because I don't think I ate, and I don't think I was drinking anything. I was cramping up. I was cramping up in my chest, my lower legs, a bunch of Charlie horses, but I was sweating profusely. As we landed, and I got a jolt of energy because I saw practically a sea of sailors and Marines right out there on the flight deck on this ship. Anybody that had a float coat, a cranial helmet, which is, cover your ears, and a float coat is this jacket with different colors. Blue, green, red, representing different parts of the Navy ship or Marines that are working the detail. And there was just a sea of float coats, and they have reflectors on. So it seemed like anybody with a float coat was on the flight deck, ready to receive, which they didn't know at the time, casualty. All they knew that casualties were coming aboard. So I come in, the guys wouldn't approach the helicopter. It was not until I got out the bank ramp and did the wave thing that people started running. More people came out there than should to help me bring the casualties into the little island in our carrier. LHD is just a miniature Navy carrier. It's not that big. Usually it houses a bunch of helicopters and a Harrier, a couple of Harrier squadrons. But anyway, I go down the little ramp elevator, bring it into medical, and there I see boat captain, my colonel on the Marine Corps side, my CO, my sergeant major, my chief, like all medical staff, because we were fully complemental. The only person missing was me because I went on advance party. So I'm coming back to my ship in my Marine unit where they have all medical. That's why on my bird, we ended up having as many casualties we can get on that bird, and then the other casualties on the other one going to the Prelude. And then we ended up getting C-130 to take the rest to Germany, I'm assuming. Well, I found out later it was lost on Germany. But at the time, I had no idea they were bringing them there. And I remember the Captain Doc was like, on the Navy side, and there was a Marine Corps colonel, they were like, what do you got for us, son? And I'm like, I got 11, I'm bagging one, and I have no idea what I did. I wrote everything down. with my skin marker of medication I did or what the hell I did. And they're like, okay, get some rest. You did a good job, son. We'll take it from here. We're gonna send somebody to replace you. As soon as he said, I will send somebody to replace you, I was like, hell no, you're bringing me back. I left my guys. There's no way in hell I'm staying and sitting this one out. So they went ahead and nodded and said, okay. I remember that day because I was exhausted. And it sucked. That was my first combat that I ever did. After early December, we ended up being deployed out to Kandahar. A couple other major incidents happened. We ended up seeing some more casualties, medical stuff, some more combat stuff. But that first deployment, like, not only did I remember a lot of the traumatic experiences, but a lot of the fun things we did out there. Trying to keep each other company, trying to talk about home, trying to think about what we were doing and how impactful we were being out there. So I left Afghanistan about April 2002. So came back home and then ended up being deployed right out again because there was only a few of us that saw combat, obviously, from Afghanistan. And I deployed in Iraq in 2003 again. But I was deployed out with a unit that I thought was going to see the rear because we were just advisors since we just recently got back from Afghanistan. There was only a few of us. And then I get stuck with the Bayad Nazariya, so the early foes of that battle. Long story short, I have seen significant things during my combat tours, and it's affected me. I ended up medically retiring, and they really didn't know what was going on with me medically. I was doing a lot of heavy drinking, I had some headaches, and then I started losing some motor skills, and then eventually I was wearing adult Pampers on active duty because I was losing control of bowel movement and urination. I was having problems with balance, and I started developing speech problems. No one knew what was going on except that they based it upon like my traumatic experiences and possibly a brain injury just because of the multiple combat situations I got my butt into. So eventually I got medically retired out in 2006. And when I was going through my med board, a staff sergeant buddy of mine asked me if I wanted to join the VA. I had nothing better to do. At this time, I didn't think I could go back to school, walk properly, pee, or take the kids out to the pool in a normal manner. What am I going to do as a 29-year-old? What's left of my life? But he convinced me to join the VA, and eventually, as you can see fit, I can talk properly, and I'm not wearing anything to help me out. I have some recall of my memory, but I'm fortunate to be here, and I'm honored. Of course, I'm a sucker for volunteering myself again for service because now I work for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. They specifically hired me because I was a combat veteran of both Afghanistan and Iraq. Plus, I've had a severe injury. At the time when I was going through my medical retirement, there was no Wounded Warrior programs. There was a Vietnam guy with a bunch of backpacks and ice cream from McDonald's. If you're ever familiar with Bethesda Naval Hospital or Bethesda Walter Reed Hospital, there used to be a McDonald's right by the barracks that most of us stayed at, and then also leading up to the medical center. He ended up giving a bunch of the amputees or whoever was there up in the wards ice cream. And that was our Wounded Warrior program at the time when I got out. When I joined the Navy, when I joined the VA, I was told to create my job. The whole expectation was, this is retriggering Vietnam veterans, and also it's your responsibility to go hunt them down, and then hunt the guys and gals coming out from Iraq and Afghanistan, and to help them logistically navigate the VA, and most importantly, to talk about their traumatic experiences in a hopeful and helpful manner with our clinicians, whether or not it's VA or outside or even DOD. As I reflect with 20 years after 9/11, specifically of that day, the life lost in both Afghanistan and Iraq, and our overall mission with global war on terrorism, both with our service members, my brothers and sisters, to our fellow U.S. citizens and our allies. 20 years is a long time. Remember their names. Remember to tell your stories of where you were when this happened. Tell your children, tell your neighbors. Express yourself how this event has ingrained in your lives. To keep this conversation going and these memories of those that have some connection to 9/11, you will be honoring everyone who's passed on this day. We remember. But this is also a celebration of remembering those that we've lost these past 20 years, both in service to our country and then more importantly, when these guys and gals are coming back. If you guys notice our suicide numbers, just like every other war with Vietnam War, there are more people dead by suicide than there were actually casualties in country in Vietnam. Those same numbers are true with Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm telling you this now. Share your stories, speak out. To my fellow brothers and sisters, I want to thank you for your service, but more importantly, it takes a tremendous amount of courage to reach out and get help and to help your battle buddies out. So I encourage you to talk. I encourage you to get all the entitlements you're due, and to take care of yourself and take care of each other. To the spouses and family members, we always support you for helping us. To just you U.S. citizens out here in the community, I want to thank you too for keeping us in mind, both to our service members and our first responders, especially for today, for 9/11. I hope this day reminds us to never forget and to always speak out these stories. It maintains the history. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the song for Unsung Heroes. I'd like to call on Barbara Clary. She wrote a poem about 9/11 shortly after the event. It's a short poem that she's going to read to us.
Thank you, Jack. The title of this poem is American Beauty. Flag of my country, America, you are a beauty to behold. With your stars and stripes, the red stripes bright like the American beauty rose. As I watch you wave freely, blowing in winds of change, my resolve is stronger than ever to show patriotic pride. Jack, this is for you.
Okay, I'd like to recognize the fire department first of all for coming. And they really surprised me today. I had a little trouble getting an honor guard, and I was promised after, I don't know how many phone calls, that I'd get an honor guard of 2 from the fire department. Well, they surprised me today, and we had an honor guard of 4. Thank you so much. As you can see, we got 3 trucks up here. Thank God they hadn't been called away. We also presents from the police department. Okay, there they are. There they are. Thank you for coming too. We appreciate all of you. Piedmont, all the help from them, they really helped make this event possible. And all my veterans that came to help this morning, thank you all so much. And especially the choir. Thank you, Cheryl and the choir. Those beautiful music that we all love. And of course, Buddy and Diane King. All of this equipment he put up early this morning. And with that, I'm going to call on the choir again for God Bless America. Please remain standing. We now have Randy Martell will be playing the taps for us. Thank you all for coming. That's our program. Thank you very much.